Can a Christian lose their salvation, or are you once saved, always saved? Let's see here. Where's my picture I want for that one? Do you guys have my picture? I made a meme. Okay. I don't know if you're supposed to make memes for serious things like this, but seriousness is not my strong point. I love the Joey and Phoebe meme, right? You repeat after me. You are saved by grace. You're saved by grace. And you're kept by grace. You're kept by grace. You're saved by grace. You're kept by grace. You're saved by grace. You're kept by works. And that's the whole theme of the meme, is he never can finish what she says right. Here's the reality is, I'm going to say there's two sides of this spectrum. And there's a point where I think it's hard to even say there are some things that are hard to get pinpointing on. Lots of people want to put their, it's so easy. I don't think it's so easy, but the reality is this, is that when we become saved, most all Christians believe we're saved by grace through faith. It was God's grace that saved us. So what keeps us? It's God's grace that keeps us. I think we all agree the gospel is not get saved by God's grace and then keep it by being really good. But it's when things get really drawn out. See, if you want to get people to believe in evolution, you have to say it happened billions of years ago. Because when you go so far down a line, then things that didn't, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Now things can be imaginable that weren't imaginable previously. And so, well, if you're really, 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 really bad, then you'll lose your salvation. Well, the hard part, again, is, I was saved by grace, so am I kept by my works? Am I kept by my works for a little while or for a long while? The other thing is, when you're saved, you're born again. A good question for people is, how would one become unborn again? This is a long question. So I would say this is, I have come to the point where I realize that no, I know as my pastor, and some of the men who were at the men's conference, Tony was here, and he's the one who told me when I was young in my faith, he goes, Joe, I know that I'm once saved, always saved. I just can't speak for you. And he meant that in the way that he said that I know that the experiential relationship that I've had with Jesus Christ, being born again, that the old things have passed away and that all things have become new, he goes, I know that nothing can change that or take that from me. But what if someone starts to just go way off the deep end and start denying Jesus? Well, first off, how many of us ever ran away? But not when you were like a teenager. I ran away when I was like 4. I used to have a panda backpack. It's not a backpack with a panda on it. It looked like a full-blown stuffed animal panda that I would wear on my back, had a big panda head. And when I wanted to run away, I opened that thing up, the drawstring, and I shoved that thing as full with VHS tapes as I could. Every one of my movies, I knew where my treasure was. I filled it with VHS tapes and I head out the door. And my parents let me go. And as I was standing 2 blocks away, they kind of waved me down and I came home. We're God's kids, and God's kids can get really foolish sometimes and do really stupid things. I think if we've been adopted as his sons, again, I just don't know where biblical emancipation paperwork comes from. But if we've been adopted as his sons and we want to be stupid and foolish and walk off the deep end, I think God's watching us with our panda backpack full of VHS tapes going, yeah, I know where their heart really is at. Here's the reality too, though. It makes it very difficult. This is a difficult thing, is that the parable of the sower speaks about seeds sown in stony soil. And this sprouts up what looks like a plant. But when the sun comes out, trials and tribulations, it dies because it had no real root. I always tell people, the parable of the sower, we have really bad. It's obviously, I hate God. That's easy, the first soil. The last soil, making tons of fruit, that's easy. But the middle two are always hard to tell apart because one looks like a Christian, but it turns out they weren't. The other one's not really making any fruit, but they're alive. They have thorns in their life. They're not making fruit. And so the reality is it's so hard to tell. Did the person lose their salvation or were they a false convert? And at one point, I was having a little debate with my diehard Calvinist, 5-point Calvinist friend, and we were going back and forth. And the one thing we ended on was this. I challenged him. because I was pushing back a little bit with him on this subject. I said, but at the end of the day, if we see someone who is obviously far from the Lord, should we assume they lost their salvation? Should we assume they were never saved? Or should we not care and just try and get them back close with the Lord? And at the end of the day, do you want to bank on, well, I mean, they gave their life to the Lord back in 94, and now they're a drug dealing heroin addict, and and this and that and everything. It's just horrible rap list. It's like, all I know is that the safest bet for me is to worry about lost souls and people who look like lost souls. But as far as the believer is concerned, the person who's walking with the Lord, I would tell them, you have nothing to fear. You're not going to mess up, because there's extreme ends of people acting like, every time you sin, you lose your salvation. I remember hearing Greg Laurie speak like 3 or 4 days after his son died in a car accident. And I remember hearing him share that day, and it was so powerful. And I remember years later, he was talking about how people were telling him that his son had gone to hell because he sinned right before he died. This is the extremes of, this idea that, you lose your salvation every time you sin. So it's crazy to see where this spectrum goes. I would tell every believer, you have nothing to fear, because you are saved by grace and you'll be kept by grace. And even if a true believer puts up a hissy fit and does some really stupid stuff, God will chase you down in your panda backpack and he'll bring you home. But if it's us dealing with other people, I am not going to just bank on a security like, well, I know they're saved even though they look absolutely not saved at all. If it's someone I love and care about, I'm going to treat them like an unsaved person. I'm going to try and win them back to the Lord. So as far as where the rubber meets the road, I love believers to have total assurance of their salvation and the security of it. And we're talking about other people whom we don't really know their hearts, and we never know where their hearts actually were, no matter how much evidence we've seen. I just don't care whether they were saved or not. I just see where they're at, and I try and deal with them where they are at. So hopefully I answered, but the short answer is that yes, I believe that Christians, if you're born again, I don't know how to unborn someone. Put him back where he came from, or so help me. I mean, I don't know how do you put a baby back? If you're born again, you're born again. And so there's that.